This week's edition of Seniors Calling is to share an exciting development with Cara Community Corporation and Holy Trinity Anglican Church. We're here today with Reverend Claire Miller, Francis Glover, and Brian Gordanier. And Brian is with the Cara Community Housing. So welcome to Seniors Calling, Reverend and
Thank
Francis. Now, Reverend, tell us about the project. Talk about the impact that you see that this will have on our community.
Well, it started, the Cara Community Corporation has a wonderful, in the community, like they're well
Right.
liked in the community.
Yeah.
And so we started wondering what could we do with our building. Of course, church buildings are becoming quite a bit of a financial burden these days.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so we're located at a lovely corner here of Northern and Great Northern Road and Northern Avenue, and lots of stores around, anything you could need. And we saw a need for affordable seniors housing.
Yeah.
So seniors would mean 55 and up.
Okay.
And so we sort of dreamed about that, and it's taken about 4 years, sort of almost as soon as I got here. I've been here almost 4 years now. We had a visioning day shortly after I came, and this idea had sort of been percolating with people in the congregation. So they mentioned it, and the congregation was quite interested in the idea.
That's
and
wonderful.
of course, there are lots of seniors, 55 and
Yes.
over, in the congregation.
Okay.
And when we wanted to offer something that was affordable, that's,
Yeah.
Sault Ste. Does not have a lot of affordable housing for seniors.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Yes, and it's wonderful that this started as a community development project with a visioning exercise at your church shortly after you arrived. That's a fantastic thing to know. And you're right about the church buildings. Finding new purposes for these buildings in housing is a remarkable way to support that, especially seniors in this community for sure. Is that something that you saw happening in other communities that you were presently ministering in?
it's happening all over. Yes.
Yeah.
The earlier ones have been happening a lot down in Toronto and London, where they were taking the sort of taking off, like they would leave the front wall of the church, and then behind it build some of them are skyscrapers of
Right.
offices and apartment buildings, and it's happening in all kinds of communities across Ontario, at least that I know of.
Yeah. Now, and I understand that there will still be a worship space, that will still be part of the Cara Community Housing Project, the Trinity Tower.
Yes, and that was something that was also very important to us, was to have it accessible.
Great.
Because our church at the moment, the main floor is accessible, but the basement is not.
Okay.
And
that poses so many challenges to things like meat pie making and yard sales, all of those things that you like to be able to get downstairs for. So let's go to Francis. And Francis, this is sort of an amazing thing that's happened in a space that has historically been about outreach, and the mission of the church has been about that, about mission, about service, and moving forward, this seems to fit very well with the mission of the church itself. So talk to me about the history of Holy Trinity.
Holy Trinity Church itself has been here since 1905.
Wow.
But Cara Community came into being in the 1980s.
Okay.
At that point in time, there was a need for housing for single women, that is, women who had left their home situations for one reason or another, had no place to go. They had perhaps been released from a brief jail term, no place to go. They were at that point in time housed in a building on Albert Street,
Okay.
a private home, actually. The home was put up for sale, and they needed some shelter for these young women.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in time, Holy Trinity congregation was made aware of this need. And at that point, it was an urgent need.
Mm-hmm.
So they decided they would give a helping hand and build a shelter for these young people these young women who had no place to go. In order to make it feasible and maintainable, at that point in time, provincial grants and programs had been lifted in this area for young women. Therefore, they had to be able to support the program.
Okay.
So they decided if you're going to build a place for 10 women, you might as well add a couple more apartment rooms and make it worthwhile. And that's how Cara Community came to be.
Wow.
A apartment building. The board from Cara Community Corporation is drawn basically from the members of Holy Trinity Congregation.
Okay.
There are now 3 buildings affiliated with Cara Community. I live in Cara 1. That's the first building that was erected.
Okay.
It houses 90 units plus 10 townhouses.
Wow. And all of those are the buildings there at the corner of Northern Ave and Great Northern, that kitty corner, right?
We actually front on to Garden River Road.
Okay.
Garden River Road.
And you're right, like that is a really special location for housing to be developed. And right now, are there people with disabilities that can also live in the apartments that are there now? Is that correct? That Cara Community Cara Community Housing also supports folks with disabilities?
Oh, most certainly.
Okay.
In Cara 1, we have the March of Dimes program.
Okay.
And we have people with severe disabilities.
Okay.
And some of the units have been made so accessible. For example, they have tracks on the ceiling so that the clients can be lifted out of their bed for hygienic purposes.
Awesome.
They have tubs that they can be lowered into. They have roll-in showers.
Wow.
Extra high toilets. They have grab bars every place.
Right.
Extra wide doorways. And everything is electronically push button for entry.
That is fantastic. And I guess that when this was first starting as a mission to support women who were fleeing perhaps domestic situations that were abusive, and you also mentioned jail, recovering from jail, that was under the leadership of Reverend Stadnick. Am I correct in that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Francis.
Yes, Father Bill was our rector at that point in time, but he wasn't the only visionary.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Stan Pratt and his wife, Judy, were very, very, well, I always think they were the spark that lit the fire. Mr. Neil Housen, Mr. Penn Horwood.
Wow.
There were a great gathering of people
Truly.
behind the entire project.
It truly is amazing when a vision takes hold and where it will go eventually. It's amazing. And so, Francis, are you planning on moving into the new Trinity Tower?
No, I have a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Cara 1 overlooking the courtyard.
Ooh.
And my children threatened to shoot me if I decide to move again.
Oh, for heaven's sakes, children. So, Reverend Miller, let's talk with you again. Are you looking forward to this? Like, what about this project has you particularly thrilled and excited to get going on? And I understand that it's starting in the fall. Am I right about that? That fall 2021 is the
Yes. We've been working on it for 3 years now, and of course the COVID situation has slowed it down quite a bit, because we had hoped to be digging into the ground right now, even in this spring, but it probably won't be until next spring now.
Okay.
So it's been delayed about a year because we couldn't get all the rezoning and permits and things like that. But it is exciting to
Yes.
even though it's slow. Even the guy coming over to check to make sure, there were no pests in here for demolition. We got our demolition permit. But of course they said, well, don't get all excited because it's good for a year. But we do each tiny little step.
Yes.
Has spurred us on, and we're thinking about ideas for the new church. We're having the hall over at Cara 1, which is called Trinity Center. We're having that renovated to be our hall, parish hall,
Great.
when the new church when the building is built, and also have a new kitchen in there. And we're going to be worshiping in there once our building here is torn down, and while construction is happening. So there's lots of creative juices flowing about how, what it's going to look like, and choosing fabrics, and it's been quite exciting. Yeah.
Right, and Brian Gordanier has provided me with some of the architectural renderings. It looks absolutely spectacular. This is exactly the kind of project that this community desperately needs. Seniors housing, housing for folks with disabilities. These are the kinds of things that help to move our society forward and embrace all of us under the same tent. So thank you so very much for speaking with me today about this project. It is exactly the kind of thing that will lift an entire community and hopefully inspire more development. More churches will look at this, perhaps for buildings that they are finding maybe redundant at this time. And it's hard to even say that because I'm a person that's always gone to church. But I know that throughout this country there are churches that are sitting empty right now, and of course COVID has also played into that, of course, but yes, repurposing buildings that are there that have a real spiritual meaning, have meaning beyond that as well. The geography of where Holy Trinity is located was at one time very rural, very farmland, and and it's really about home and finding the best of all of us.
Yes, and sorry, Fran had another comment. She wanted just to make that it is a nonprofit.
Right.
Care is a nonprofit. So we're not doing this for the money.
No,
and we always say that the church is not the building.
That's
the
right.
church is the people.
Right.
But
wherever two or more are gathered.
That's exactly right. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Reverend Miller, I am so grateful that you made it to this community and helped to shape this vision. And Francis, you've been just a longtime member of that church, and we can't thank you enough for the leadership that you've provided in this community as well, and the folks that you've already mentioned. They are all part of the essence of the new Trinity Tower as we go forward. So is there anything else that we could talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I think just the feeling of community, both in our church congregation and in the apartment buildings as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Without being on each other's laps, but we do care, and we do check on our neighbors as needed.
Yes.
Without being intrusive.
Exactly. And if COVID has shown us anything, it is how important it is that we are connected to someone, to people, to a group of people. And our church community has been a driving force in that, the outreach mechanism and all of those spaces that churches find ways to support people. So thank you so much for the leadership in our community. And I look forward to sharing this in our next edition of Seniors Calling. Thank you very much, girls. We're all done.